For thousands of years humanity had looked up at the night sky with wonder. Children pointed at the stars. Lovers dreamed under them, and scientists measured their distance with trembling hands. The universe was always there, silent and endless, a mystery waiting for someone brave enough to cross into it. Earth was small, fragile, and young compared to the infinite galaxies above. But in the hearts of humans there was something the stars never had: restless hunger, and a stubborn refusal to stop dreaming. When the first faster-than-light drive was completed, it was not built in glory but in desperation. Earth was tired of wars, tired of division, tired of being trapped in its own cage of oceans and skies. The nations came together in rare unity. They built a vessel called the Odyssey. It was not sleek. It was not elegant. It was heavy, armored, and filled with technology stitched together from the efforts of millions of minds. It was a ship that carried not just engines and weapons, but the weight of every dream ever whispered beneath the stars. When the Odyssey leapt into hyperspace for the first time, humanity held its breath. Across cities, people gathered around screens. In villages, children knelt in the dirt to watch flickering broadcasts. Every heartbeat is one, waiting for the moment that would prove Earth was no longer chained to one planet. When the ship reappeared beyond the edge of the solar system, alive and whole, a cheer rose across the world so loud that even the night seemed to listen. Humanity had touched the stars, but the dream did not last long. The first alien signals arrived soon after, drawn by the light of humanity's new presence. They did not arrive as enemies. They came as observers, diplomats, and traders, members of a galactic community far older and wiser than Earth could ever imagine. Humanity expected wonder, perhaps respect. Instead, the stars laughed. In the Galactic Council, Earth was introduced as a child world. Our species was compared to insects crawling out of the mud. Our weapons were called crude sticks. Our lifespans were mocked as short, our bodies fragile, our home a backwater planet too young to matter. When human ambassadors stood tall and spoke proudly, the alien delegates whispered jokes behind their sharp teeth and shining eyes. To them, Earth was a novelty, a primitive species too stubborn to die but too small to stand among giants. They gave us scraps of trade, crumbs of knowledge, and words dipped in false kindness. But behind every handshake was the sound of laughter. The council chambers became a place of humiliation. Human scientists who had once been praised as geniuses were now called beginners. Human soldiers, decorated with medals for bravery, were dismissed as children playing at war. Even our art, our music, and our history were treated like curiosities from a forgotten museum. The most painful part was not their insults. It was their indifference. No one saw Earth as a threat, not even as an equal. We were not feared. We were not respected. We were nothing. Yet in the silence of that shame something stirred. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the endless cruelty of its own nature. Every scar in our history carried a lesson. And though the galaxy saw weakness, humans knew the truth. Survival had made them strong. The stars might laugh now, but laughter could turn to silence. The leaders of Earth returned from the council in anger, but also in unity. For once, no nation argued. No border mattered. Every leader, every soldier, every scientist felt the same fire burning in their chest. If the galaxy would not see Earth as equal, then Earth would force them to see. The Odyssey was no longer just an explorer. Hidden inside its armored frame, plans began to grow. Secret workshops were lit in the dark corners of Earth. Factories worked without rest. Weapons never before tested were designed in silence. Humanity's first warship was being born, not for conquest, not for glory, but for survival. The stars had laughed at Earth, but humanity had been laughed at before. Empires had mocked them. Tyrants had underestimated them. Nature itself had tried to break them. And every time humanity had risen from the dirt, bloodied but unbroken. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the moment they called Earth primitive, they had planted the seed of their own fear. For in the heart of every human burned something alien eyes could never understand: defiance. And when defiance takes the shape of steel, fire, and war, the stars learn to stop laughing. The laughter of the galaxy still echoed in human hearts when the Odyssey returned home. The ship had survived its first journeys, but the pride of humanity had not. Every insult, every mocking word spoken in the council halls burned like fire in the minds of those who had dreamed of being welcomed as equals. In secret meetings, far away from alien ears, Earth's leaders sat together. They gathered in underground chambers in war rooms lit with cold screens and heavy silence. The air was filled with frustration but also determination. No one wanted to return to the council as weak. No one wanted humanity's children to grow up under the shadow of ridicule. The plan was born not out of ambition, but out of necessity. Humanity had always survived by preparing for storms, by building weapons when threatened, by standing tall when others tried to crush them. And now, they faced the greatest storm of all, the indifference and arrogance of a galaxy that saw them as nothing. The Odyssey was already a miracle, but it was only the beginning. Inside its armored hull lay the framework for something greater, something terrifying. Humanity decided that their first true gift to the stars would not be poetry or art, but a weapon. Not because they loved war, but because war was the only language the galaxy respected. The project was given no single name at first. Some called it the Earth Shield, others called it the Iron Dream. But to the workers, the engineers, and the soldiers who whispered about it in the dark, it was simply the warship. Factories roared day and night. Engineers designed weapons no alien had ever seen. Where the Council's ships focused on beauty and balance, humans focused on survival and destruction. They built railguns capable of tearing holes through mountains. They developed missile systems that could track and swarm like hunting wolves. They wrapped the hull in thick layers of composite armor, heavier than any alien design, made to endure not minutes but hours of battle. It was not sleek. It was not graceful. It was raw power, ugly, brutal, and unyielding. Every bolt, every plate of steel carried the anger of a species tired of being laughed at. And yet the ship was not only a machine of war. It was also a symbol. Around the world, people spoke of it with pride. Children drew pictures of it in schools. Old veterans watched the secret footage of its construction with tears in their eyes. For the first time, Earth felt united, not under a flag of conquest, but under the promise of survival. Still, not everyone agreed. Some feared the path humanity was taking. In quiet protests, voices cried out, "Are we not proving the galaxy right? If we build a warship, are we not becoming the very monsters they fear?" Others argued that weapons only brought more weapons. Blood only called for more blood. But the leaders knew there was no turning back. History had taught humanity that peace was not given, it was defended. Every right they had ever gained, freedom, dignity, survival, had been carved from the jaws of struggle. And now, facing an entire galaxy, they had no choice but to prepare. The day the warship's frame was completed, silence fell across the massive shipyard. It stretched larger than any vessel Earth had ever built. Its body was dark and sharp, bristling with weapon mounts. It looked less like a ship and more like a beast waiting to awaken. The workers stood at a distance, staring with awe and fear. They knew that this creation would change humanity forever. Inside the command deck, Captain Elias Merrick, a soldier who had seen too many wars on Earth, placed his hand on the steel walls. His voice was quiet but carried the weight of millions. "They called us children," he whispered. "Then let them hear the voice of grown men." As the warship took shape, whispers began to spread across the stars. Traders spoke of strange activity on the human homeworld. Spies tried to learn the truth but returned with only fragments of rumor. Of a ship heavier, deadlier, and stranger than any design in galactic history. The council dismissed these whispers with laughter as always. "The primitives build toys," they said. "They cannot build monsters," but humanity knew. They knew the day would come when the galaxy would test them again. And when that day came, they would not arrive with words. They would arrive with fire. The warship was not yet finished, but already its shadow stretched across the earth. It was not just steel. It was hope. It was defiance. It was the answer to every insult, every sneer, every laugh that had ever been thrown at them. And in the silence of the stars, destiny waited. The warship was still hidden when Earth sent the Odyssey back to the Council. This time the ambassadors carried not only greetings but pride. They hoped the galaxy might notice the strength behind their eyes, the unity in their voices. But the council chambers were the same as before, grand halls carved from alien stone, filled with voices that dripped with arrogance. Towering insectoid lords clicked their mandibles in mockery. Shining reptilian delegates hissed their laughter. The older races of the galaxy leaned back in their thrones, staring at the humans as if they were insects daring to speak among giants. The insults came swiftly. "You come again, little Earth?" One alien delegate sneered, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Still crawling from your mud and yet you dream of stars?" Others joined the mockery. "Fragile bones, weak flesh, short lives. Why do you beg for a seat among us? The galaxy has no use for children." The human ambassadors stood tall, but inside their hearts a storm raged. They had carried with them the pride of billions, the whispers of children who dreamed of space, the hope of a planet that wanted respect. And yet here, in this place of supposed unity, they were laughed at once again. But the laughter was not the worst part. The worst came when the Creel Dominion stood. The Creel were a warlike empire feared across the stars. Their ships were massive, their warriors ruthless. Where other species mocked humanity for amusement, the Creel mocked them with hunger. The Creel leader, armored in black scales, stepped forward. His voice was deep, carrying the weight of cruelty. "Enough talk of children. Earth does not deserve to sit among us. Earth must kneel, or Earth must burn." The council chamber fell silent. No one spoke against the Creel. Not one delegate raised a word in defense of Earth. The Creel continued, their words striking like a whip. "You will give tribute. You will give labor. You will give your sons and daughters as slaves. Or we will wipe your fragile world from the stars." The humans froze. Their hands clenched at their sides. Every insult before this had been words, but now it was a demand for chains. And the silence of the council, their silence, was worse than the Creel's threat. No ally stood for humanity. No hand reached out in friendship. The galaxy had abandoned them. The lead human ambassador, an old woman named Helena Voss, felt her chest tighten. She looked across the chamber, searching for even one sympathetic face. There was none. She felt the weight of Earth pressing down on her shoulders, and for a moment despair threatened to crush her. But then she remembered. She remembered the factories back home, the engineers who had worked in secret, the warship rising from steel and fire. She remembered the voices of children whispering, "Make them see us." Helena raised her head. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew firm. "Earth will not kneel." The Creel hissed with laughter. "Then Earth will burn." The council ended the session with cold indifference. The humans left with heavy steps, their pride wounded, but their resolve unbroken. For outside the chamber they knew a truth no alien yet understood. Earth had built something in silence, something the galaxy thought impossible. The news of the Creel threat reached Earth within days. Across the planet, fear spread like wildfire. Families wept, leaders trembled, and old veterans clenched their fists in anger. The Creel were not raiders or pirates. They were conquerors. Entire civilizations had been crushed beneath their fleets. Now they had chosen Earth as their prey. But alongside the fear there was another fire, defiance. Humanity had been mocked, insulted, and now threatened with slavery. But they were not alone this time. They had the warship. The ship was not yet tested in battle, but its steel heart was ready. Workers who had labored in secret now looked at their creation with new eyes. Soldiers stood taller when they saw its cannons gleam in the dark. Engineers whispered to one another, "This will be the moment." Captain Elias Merrick gathered his crew inside the warship's vast hangar. His voice was quiet, steady, and full of iron. "The Creel think we are weak. They think we are children. They think Earth will fall like all the others. But today we will show them what they fear most. We will show them what it means to be human." Every soldier, every pilot, every technician felt the weight of his words. They were not just defending a planet. They were defending the right of their species to exist with dignity. The Creel fleet was already moving, their 30 warships cutting through the stars toward Earth's system. The galaxy watched in silence, expecting the same ending it had seen 100 times before, the Creel crushing another weak world. But the galaxy had not seen what Earth had built in the dark. The warship waited, its cannons slept, its engines hummed like a predator's breath. And in the hearts of its crew there was no laughter, no fear, only defiance. The insult of the Creel would be answered, not with words, but with fire. The Creel fleet came like a storm. 30 warships, black and silver, tore through space with engines that burned like suns. They were confident, merciless, and eager. To them, Earth was not a challenge but a feast. They had crushed civilizations far older, far stronger. A single human world, with its primitive technology, would not survive a single battle. The galaxy watched in silence. Council worlds sent hidden observers eager to see humanity's humiliation. Some hoped Earth might survive a little longer, but most expected ashes. No one spoke for humanity. No one lifted a hand to help. But humanity had not been idle. The warship, still unnamed by the galaxy but whispered on Earth as the Hammer of Dawn, rose from its hidden dock. Its armored body glimmered in the void. It was larger than any Earth vessel before, though still smaller than the Creel flagships. Yet it carried a weight that no Creel captain could measure, the will of an entire species. On the command bridge, Captain Elias Merrick stood with calm eyes. Around him, officers checked weapons, engines, shields. The crew's hands trembled, but their voices were steady. They knew what waited beyond the stars, 30 ships against one. Logic said they would die. History said they would kneel. But humanity had never lived by logic alone. "Bring us to Caltris," Merrick ordered. His voice was quiet but heavy with iron. "Let the galaxy see." The warship moved forward, engines roaring like thunder. Soon the enemy fleet came into sight, a wall of alien steel, bristling with weapons. The Creel commander laughed over open channels. His voice was cruel, filled with arrogance. "One ship? That is your defense? Earth sends a coffin to its own funeral." The warship gave no answer. Humanity had chosen silence. The only language they would speak today was fire. The Creel opened the battle with fury. Beams of plasma, missiles, and laser fire streaked across the void, striking against the human ship. Explosions lit its armor, and for a moment, the galaxy thought it was over. But the warship did not break. Layered plating, forged in Earth's desperate factories, absorbed the fire. Shields shimmered, bent, but held. When the smoke cleared, the human vessel still stood, scarred but unyielding. "Return fire," Merrick commanded. And for the first time the galaxy saw what human weapons could do. Railguns thundered like the wrath of a god, slamming magnetic slugs into the nearest Creel cruiser. Its hull cracked open like glass, and in seconds, The ship was torn apart. Missiles launched in swarms, weaving through enemy defenses with deadly precision, striking one target after another. Plasma beams cut across the void, and ships that had terrorized worlds for centuries exploded into drifting fire. The Creel roared in shock. One of their mighty cruisers destroyed in moments. This was not the battle they expected. They surged forward in anger, surrounding the human ship, raining fire upon it. But humanity fought differently. Where alien fleets dueled with honor and ritual, humans fought like survival itself was on the line. Every shot was meant to kill. Every strike was merciless. They did not waste time, they did not play games, they tore their enemies apart with ruthless efficiency. Inside the warship, the crew felt the tremors of every impact. Sparks flew from consoles, alarms screamed, and yet no one wavered. They knew that behind them lay Earth, their families, their history, their very right to exist. If they failed, everything they loved would vanish. That thought gave them strength greater than fear. Minutes passed and the impossible happened. 5 Creel ships lay in ruins. 10 more were crippled. The warship moved like a beast among prey, refusing to die, refusing to yield. The Creel commander, furious and desperate, shouted over comms, "This cannot be. You are primitives." But the truth was undeniable. Humanity had turned its pain into steel, its humiliation into fire. And the Creel, who once believed Earth would kneel, now began to tremble. Then came the moment that changed the galaxy. The warship charged directly into the heart of the Creel fleet. Cannons fired in all directions. Missiles swarmed like a storm. A Creel battleship larger than a city tried to block the path. The warship's railgun split it in two, the void lit with fire brighter than a star. Silence spread across the council observers. The galaxy, watching from afar, realized it was witnessing something new. A species mocked as children had just destroyed the most feared warriors in less than an hour. When the last Creel ship broke apart, drifting into silence, Captain Merrick stood tall. His face was lined with exhaustion, his body heavy with battle, but his voice was steady. "Send a message to Earth," he said softly. "Tell them humanity is no longer a child." The crew cheered, some with tears streaming down their faces. For the first time they knew, Earth was not weak. Humanity had spoken in the only language the galaxy respected and the stars had heard. The Battle of Caltris was over. The warship was scarred but alive, and from that day the galaxy would never laugh at Earth again. When the fire over Caltris faded, the galaxy held its breath. The Creel dominion, feared for centuries, had been shattered, not by an empire, not by a fleet, but by one ship. One human ship. The observers who had watched the battle in secret carried the news back to the council. The recording spread like wildfire, faster than light, traveling from world to world. At first, many refused to believe. They thought it was a trick, an illusion, a story meant to frighten children. How could a race so young, so primitive, do what even older powers had failed to do? But the proof could not be denied. The images were clear. Creel warships exploding one after another, their mighty flagship torn apart by weapons no alien had ever seen. The name of the human vessel was whispered across the stars. The warship. For the first time, the council chambers were silent when humanity's name was spoken. No laughter, no mocking whispers, only fear. The Creel themselves, proud and merciless, sent no more threats. Their empire retreated into silence, licking its wounds. Other species who had once called Earth an insect now stared at the humans as though they were a flame that might burn too bright. Respect and terror began to mix in equal measure. On Earth, the victory was met with tears and cheers. Across cities, people flooded the streets, waving flags, holding each other, crying openly. Families who had feared slavery now embraced in relief. Children painted the warship in their notebooks. Old veterans saluted their screens with trembling hands. Humanity had not only survived, it had risen. But inside the warship, the crew did not cheer for long. They had fought, they had killed, and they had watched thousands of Creel lives vanish in fire. The galaxy may have seen a miracle, but the crew saw blood on their hands. Captain Elias Merrick sat alone after the battle, staring at the stars beyond his window. His face was tired, his eyes heavy. He whispered words that only the walls could hear. "We did what we had to do, but may the stars forgive us for what comes next." For the victory had a price. Humanity had revealed its weapon too soon. They had shown the galaxy that they were no longer children, but predators in their own right. And predators attract attention. Already spies and envoys moved across space, eager to learn Earth's secrets. Already whispers began among the older races. If humans can build such ships now, what will they build in a century? In 1,000 years? Some wanted alliances, others wanted control, and some wanted destruction. In the council chambers, alien leaders spoke in hushed tones. If one primitive ship can do this, what will an entire fleet do? What if they turn their weapons on us? Fear crept into every word. For centuries, the balance of power had remained stable. The council, an old game played by old empires. But humanity had just tipped the board. And yet what terrified them most was not the warship itself. It was the way humanity fought. Aliens fought with ritual, with honor, with rules. They tested their strength, they measured their power. But humans fought with desperation, with rage, with survival burning in their veins. They struck to kill, never to test. They fought not as warriors seeking glory, but as survivors refusing to die. The galaxy had never seen such war. And now it could never forget. On Earth, leaders gathered once again. Their victory had given them pride, but also burden. They knew the galaxy no longer saw them as harmless. Some argued for peace, for restraint. Others argued for preparation, for more ships, for more weapons. The room filled with debate, with hope and with fear. But all agreed on one truth. Humanity had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The warship returned home scarred, but alive. Its hull bore the marks of plasma and fire. But those scars became symbols, reminders that humanity had stood against giants and endured. Soldiers touched the steel as if it were sacred. Children were brought to see it, their eyes wide with awe. It was not just a ship anymore. It was a legend. Still, deep in the night, whispers carried through Earth's cities. Some people were afraid. If we can destroy the Creel, what will the galaxy do to us? Will they come together to stop us? Mothers held their children close, wondering if more warships would mean more blood. Philosophers asked if humanity was losing its soul by choosing fire over peace. But for every doubt there was defiance. Humanity had been mocked, threatened, abandoned. No one had come to save them. And so they had saved themselves. The galaxy had given them laughter. Humanity had given the galaxy silence, and silence they knew was only the beginning. The galaxy had fallen silent after Caltris, but silence could not last forever. News spread too quickly. Every system, every colony, every race now whispered the same word: humanity. At first it was fear. Worlds that once dismissed Earth as harmless now spoke of them as a danger. Captains of alien fleets tightened their patrols when human vessels appeared. Merchants raised prices when trading with Earth, pretending it was business, but the truth was clear. They were afraid. The council itself was shaken. The same delegates who once mocked humans now spoke their name with caution. Some demanded that humanity be punished before they became too strong. Others argued that it was wiser to keep them close, to tame the fire before it spread. But none dared to laugh anymore, for the Creel Dominion's fleet had been crushed, and the galaxy could not forget the images. The warship standing alone against 30 ships, its cannons ripping apart giants. No one had ever seen war fought with such fury, such merciless precision. Humanity had shown that they did not fight for glory or pride, but for survival. And that made them dangerous. On Earth, people felt the shift too. Once their name was spoken as a joke. Now it carried weight. Traders who visited Earth did not mock. They bowed their heads. Alien envoys arrived with gifts instead of insults. For the first time in history, Earth was treated as something the galaxy had no choice but to respect. But with respect came suspicion. Captain Elias Merrick stood once more on the bridge of the warship, watching as reports came in from across the stars. He saw the changes, how alien fleets moved differently around human borders, how diplomats spoke with new caution, how even allies flinched when he entered the room. Humanity had won power, yes, but with power came isolation. Fear, Merrick said quietly to his first officer, is a double-edged blade. It can protect us, but it can also cut us apart. The crew understood. They had seen fear before, on Earth, in old wars, in the eyes of enemies and allies alike. Fear made people cautious, but it also made them dangerous. In the council chambers, debates raged. Some leaders whispered, "Perhaps Earth is the weapon we need. They are brutal, yes, but effective. We could use them." Others hissed, "No, they are a threat. If they can build one warship now, what happens when they build 10? Or 100? The galaxy was split. Some began to admire humanity's courage. Others began to plot against them. And yet, among ordinary people across the stars, something else began to grow. On distant colonies, young aliens painted the warship's image on their walls. Songs were sung about the humans who stood against the Creel. In taverns and marketplaces, stories spread like wildfire, of how fragile humans had looked into the face of giants and refused to kneel. Respect was taking root, slowly, stubbornly, just as humanity itself always had. On Earth, the warship returned to orbit, scarred but unbroken. Its hull was marked with the wounds of battle, but those scars became symbols. Pilots touched the steel and whispered prayers. Children were brought to see it, their eyes wide with wonder. To them, it was not just a ship. It was proof that Earth mattered. Yet not all hearts were at peace. Philosophers and poets began to ask questions that others were too afraid to voice. If fear is the only way the galaxy will respect us, what will that make us? Will humanity become the very monsters we fought to resist? Helena Voss, the ambassador who had once stood in silence before the council, now walked through the same halls with her head held high. No one mocked her. No one sneered. But she saw the truth in their eyes. They did not welcome her. They feared her. And she wondered which was worse, their laughter or their silence. Still, she spoke with the voice of Earth, and her words carried weight now. We did not come to the stars to conquer.
We came to live.
But if the galaxy forces us to choose between chains and fire, we will always choose fire. Her speech was remembered for years, not because it was elegant, but because it was honest. The galaxy understood at last humanity was not a child race. They were survivors, and survivors could not be broken. But even as respect grew, shadows moved in the dark. Plans were whispered in hidden corners. Old empires, fearful of losing their thrones, began to prepare. For if humanity could destroy the Creel, then perhaps one day they could destroy anyone. On the bridge of the warship, Captain Merrick stared out into the endless stars. His crew waited for his words, but he said nothing. He knew what was coming. Respect was earned, yes. Fear was won, yes. But peace was still far away. And in his heart he wondered if peace would ever come at all. The galaxy could not escape the truth anymore. Humanity had risen not as a child to be mocked, but as a force to be reckoned with. The first warship stood as proof, orbiting Earth like a silent guardian. Its shadow fell across oceans and cities, a reminder of the price they had paid and the strength they had earned. But power always attracts enemies. Whispers turned into plans. Hidden alliances were formed between frightened empires. The great powers of the galaxy decided that Earth must be contained. They called it balance, but in reality, it was fear of losing their thrones. When the council met again, humanity was no longer laughed at. No jeers, no jokes. Instead, silence filled the chamber when Helena Voss entered. Her presence carried weight, but she could feel it. Behind the quiet faces there was plotting. Earth has no desire to rule, she declared before the assembly. We only want to live free. We ask for peace, not crowns. But the galaxy did not believe her. They never believed those who held fire in their hands. Soon fleets moved again. Not pirates, not raiders, whole empires. Dozens of ships armed to the teeth sailing toward Earth. They told themselves it was for safety. They told themselves it was to stop chaos. But deep down they feared what humanity might become tomorrow. When the reports reached Captain Elias Merrick, he stood in silence for a long time. His crew watched him, knowing what it meant. The galaxy had chosen to test them again. Then we will answer, Merrick said finally. His voice was quiet, but his words carried fire. The warship, scarred but unbroken, launched once more. Around it flew new ships, smaller but forged with the same spirit. Earth had not wasted time. Every hand, every mind, every heart had worked together. They had built more than weapons, they had built a fleet. Not large, not grand, but enough to fight. Enough to survive. The enemy came in force. Alien dreadnoughts blocked out the stars. The Council's fleets believed they would crush Earth quickly, as one crushes an ember. But when fire is pressed too hard, it only spreads. The battle was chaos. Steel and flame tore through the void. The warship led the charge, its cannons screaming. Merrick's crew fought like demons. Every strike powered by the memory of old humiliation. Every shot carrying the fury of centuries of silence. The galaxy watched, and what they saw changed everything. The humans did not fight with elegance. They fought with raw will, with defiance that seemed unbreakable. The warship stood against armadas, refusing to fall. Smaller Earth vessels darted between giants, striking with precision. Even when ships burned, even when lives were lost, they did not surrender. By the battle's end, the stars themselves seemed scarred. Wreckage floated across the void. Alien fleets, broken and bleeding, retreated in shame. Humanity had not only survived, they had won. Again. And in that moment, something shifted forever. The galaxy realized that Earth could not be contained. Humanity was not a child race to be mocked. They were not a mistake to be corrected. They were a people who had earned their place, then through blood, through fire, through unyielding spirit. In the ruins of the council chamber, as new debates began, a phrase was whispered for the first time. The throne of fire. It was not a crown of gold, not a seat carved by empires. It was the place humanity had built for itself. Through war, through survival, through the fire no one else dared to touch. Helena Voss, standing tall before the assembly, gave the final words that sealed Earth's legacy. You called us primitive, she said. You mocked us, caged us, tried to break us. And yet we stand. Not because we seek thrones, not because we seek to rule, but because we refuse to kneel. If you fear us, then let that fear remind you we will never bow again. Silence followed. Not the silence of mockery, but the silence of respect. From that day, humanity was no longer treated as a footnote in galactic history. They were written as one of its defining chapters. Traders carried their stories across the stars. Children of alien races grew up dreaming of the warship, and leaders who once plotted against them thought twice before lifting a hand. The galaxy had learned the truth. Fire cannot be mocked. Fire cannot be contained. And humanity, fragile, stubborn, unbreakable humanity, had claimed its place among the stars, not by begging, not by bowing, but by building its own throne. A throne of fire.